All right, so things are really starting to take shape now.
Mm-hmm.
This is where things are going to get interesting. In this lesson, what Zach's going to start doing is cutting in the detail required to go ahead and pull out the hips and legs, and, of course, the butt.
Yeah, it makes me wonder why you said this lesson was going to be interesting. But anyway, we'll go on past that.
Zach has issues with modeling butts. For some reason, well, you'll see. We'll see.
Well, the butt is not an easy thing to model. It really isn't.
I know those two humps can be quite difficult.
Well, you would think they'd be kind of simple, wouldn't they? But then you get there, you start working on it, it's just like, what are all these funny dimples and shapes all over this for? But we'll get around to that. No pun intended.
Okay.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is create a cut from this inside vertex out to the outside edge here. And what I'm doing as we work along here is I'm preparing these faces so that I can extrude a leg out of them here in just a few minutes. So this vertex here at the inside of the crotch, I'm going to pull forward and Y a little bit. And now I'm going to make a cut from the front of the crotch all the way around up underneath our gut area, straight back to the back. And for those of you who are having a hard time seeing through my NURMS object, let me undo that cut real quick. It just suddenly occurred to me, people are like, I can't see through your NURMS. So we'll switch that off real quick. I'll switch edge faces back on to make this a little more apparent, and I'll just redo this cut. So we're cutting across the front of the crotch, up underneath the gut itself, straight back to the back, then down across the cut we just made, and back here to the back of the glute. And we'll be cleaning up several of the faces that appear back here at the butt later on. Right now we're not going to worry about it too much. So we also have a cut to make from this vertex here, and all we have to do is just pull this point to the inside of this face and click. Now the reason we're doing this is that we want these two faces that I'm kind of moving around here. Let me go ahead and select them and get them highlighted so you can see. We'll hit F2 to turn on shaded faces. I want these two faces to become the legs when they're extruded. And right now, if we hadn't made this cut here, the legs themselves would blend right into the crotch area.
Right.
So that cut is just giving us a little bit of a division for later on when we're pulling these legs out. Let me switch shaded faces back off. We also want to make a cut. Let me get my cut tool back out, somewhere down here. From the side of the stomach, around the hip, and down here to this part of this face. You'll notice I'm not continuing these cuts any further than they are. Basically, I'm just trying to get this face prepared to extrude. So right now, let's count up the edges we have going around. I'll go ahead and go to edges and highlight them as I go. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's going to work just perfect. Now, it is not, before anybody goes any further, before anybody even asks and sends me an email, it's not a hardcore rule to have 8 faces going around your leg. It's just that later on when I'm shaping up these legs, I'm going to be using 8 faces around the whole thing. And if you're trying to make the vertices look like mine do, it might be confusing if yours had 7 or 9 or another number. So just to keep everybody straight and everybody on the same level, make sure that your leg faces here have 8 edges all the way around them. Alright, so still in edge subobject mode, I'm going to go ahead and select this edge here and remove it. By the way, just kind of a note for those who missed VTM3 where we go over the modeling tools, don't delete that edge.
Ooh, now we have a problem.
Watch your delete key. There's a reason you hit remove. Basically, it takes out the edge but leaves the face that's dependent on it. So with that done, I'm not going to get into too much reshaping now. I want to go ahead and get the stump of our leg in place in the actual hip area before we do too much else. So I'm going to go to a front view, or technically our back view, and I'm going to jump back to perspective real quick, and we're going to grab this actual face right here, make sure it's selected before we go to our back view, otherwise we won't be able to see it. So now in our back view, I'm going to extrude numerically. And we'll just take our extrude height. Oh, it doesn't really matter. We'll say something like 1.2 will be just fine. Just enough to give us enough detail to start moving things about. Go ahead and click OK. I'm going to hit 1 to go back to vertex subobject mode. And what I'm going to start doing is using my move tool to start moving these guys around. So I'm going to, watch out there. I'm going to select these vertices here at the crotch and kind of drag them in to line things up a little better. Just start grabbing these guys and pulling them down to form sort of a leg stump. And right now they don't have to be level. I'm going to actually show a trick that some of you who watched VTM3 might remember, but we'll get to that here in just a second. Go ahead and go to my perspective view and make sure I get all these vertices. Look, I missed one here. We'll pull him down with the rest of his friends. And now I'm going to use motion in the XY plane to start rounding this stump out a little bit. Make it look a little more like a stump leg, if you will. Looks kind of painful. Looks like he's an amputee, but that's okay. So I'll grab this vertex here. We'll pull it forward in Y. Great deal. Just kind of making this look a little more natural. Looks like I moved something back there I didn't mean to. It's a good idea when you're moving around your perspective view. Just for those of you out there who haven't been modeling very long, anytime you select a vertex, it's a good idea, if it doesn't turn red right away, to pan around it real quick and make sure your manipulator is actually sitting on that vertex. Pull this guy forward in Y, maybe pull his friend up in Y as well. And these legs are really starting to get a lot more rounded out. That already looks much, much better.
Taking shape.
Okay, so here's our problem. I mean, this is looking pretty good. We got some stumps
from the front side.
Yeah. Well, for the side view, we're going to need to be tweaking a little bit too. We'll get to that here in just a second.
Understand.
But our problem right now is later on when we start to extrude this leg. I mean, take a look at what's going to happen. We extrude this guy, and what direction is this going to go in? If it goes by local normal, that leg's going to go in all kinds of crazy directions. So what we're going to do is hit the 4 key to go into polygon sub-object mode. And we'll select this polygon, and then we'll go to a top view. It doesn't matter if we go to a top or bottom view. And we're going to hit the great, magical, wonderful, fabulous View Align button. Doesn't look like all that much happened, but now if we go back to our perspective view, those two faces have been completely flattened out.
Yep.
What that did actually was it took our faces themselves and aligned them to the top view, basically made them flat from a top view perspective. So it's just a quick trick to flatten those guys out. There are some of you out there who might be accustomed to scaling down the faces several times until they're flat, and there's a whole bunch of tricks to do this. Trust me, the View Align tool is probably the fastest way to go about this. So I'll kind of keep tweaking real quick. We got kind of a problem here at the butt. We got this one little vertex kind of sticking out here, making sort of a spine. We'll pull him back in, and we'll start rounding this out here in a minute. But before we even get to the butt at all, we've got an area here at the hips that's going to be receiving a lot of animation. I mean, anytime if you're walking, if you're squatting, if you're jumping, anything at all, the hips themselves are bending quite a lot. So we're going to need to cut in some more detail. Right now we have almost no detail on these hips right now, and it's going to be very hard to animate them. For those of you who aren't familiar with modeling for animation, I'll just kind of give you sort of an analogy. I know we don't have a camera, and you guys can't see me as I talk with my hands like I always do when I'm teaching. But just kind of picture in your head a soda straw. If you take a straw and just try to fold it in half, you'll notice that it just kind of bends right in the middle, almost like it creases. But if you have one of those cool soda straws that has all the little ridges around it, and you have the bendy straws, everybody's seen it. Buzz, you've seen a bendy straw at least once or twice. If you have a bendy straw and you try to take that guy and bend him, you'll get a nice smooth curve.
For those that would like to follow along with Zach's analogy, you can simply make a cylinder and then just only add one segment to it and apply the bend modifier to it. And you'll be able to see exactly what he's talking about in the 3ds Max world.
We'll get to that another day.
Okay.
But anyway, instead of really what we need is more edges so that Max can more properly deform this hip area.
The detail is extremely important if you're going to have a character or any sort of geometry animated.
Exactly. So I'm going to pull this vertex back a little bit, and we're going to get a nice kind of straight edge here at the inside of the thigh. And I'm going to make several cuts. Actually, I'm going to make 3 cuts, but I'm going to have to continue them as I rotate around the viewport just to kind of save confusion. So I'm going to be making 3 cuts here from this edge at the inner part of the thigh. We'll start here and make the first cut to this edge and continue it out here to the outside. Now let me rotate around before I go any further. We'll continue it from here, about halfway up the thigh, and then we'll just end it up here at the very topmost corner. Now, the next cut we're going to make, we'll start just below that one on this edge. Come around to this edge, zoom out. around to here. And we'll bring this one to this point back here at the buttocks. This only gives us one more. Remember to start these actually on that inside edge. And I know for some people that might seem a little strange. I'll explain that here in just a second. Let me finish this cut. We'll go across. Let me zoom out so you can see the whole thing a little better. Get the bounding box out of the way. Cut across here. Rotate back around. And we'll go up to this vertex here. So we've got all three of these cuts. They're rooted here at this original edge. Now, some of you that might seem strange. Why haven't we rooted them at another vertex? In this case, this is going to give us the detail we need, and we've got all of these cuts anchored in a place that nobody's ever going to see. It's kind of tucked out of the way. So this will work just fine for what we're using. Now comes the hard part. Now we have to sculpt our alien's butt a little bit to kind of get some buttocks, some cheeks, if you will, as some people call them. So we're going to start off. First, I'm going to switch on NURMS. Now, those of you who have been modeling with me, we've had NURMS off for a greater part of this, but really, we're trying to make a very organic shape, and it's just going to help us out a great deal if we can see things update as we work. So I'm going to get my move tool out, and we'll start off by taking these two vertices here and just pulling them straight back. Grab this guy up here in front, maybe pull him forward a little bit. Now, you can just barely make out that I've got an edge coming in this way, edge coming in this way, and so on. So there's obviously a vertex right about here. And it looks like I selected something on the front part of the alien as well. So I'll marquee select from here, and I'll pull that hidden vertex out just a little bit. And pull the one next to it out a little bit as well. And things are starting to round out. We're going to take these innermost vertices and start pulling them in X. Also pull them back a little bit in Y. Pull these guys forward. Kind of move this edge of the leg out of the way a little bit. Okay, so we're starting to get kind of a butt area, and you maybe round it out a little bit more.
And another thing that also can kind of help is where the back goes down, not have it go in quite so deep up there.
You mean here?
Well, go in center from there.
Okay.
It goes
I
in.
see.
It's like he's got a butt crack that goes all the way up halfway.
Absolutely, absolutely. That division is a little bit sharp, so we can pull that back out a little bit.
Maybe even a little bit more than that.
Yeah. Panning around a little bit. We can also clean that up a little bit later by playing with the weighting on those edges.
True.
And for those of you who remember the seams lesson from the last VTM, that's a very helpful way to model things out when you're working inside of Max. So things are starting to look a little bit better. Pull him out a little bit in X. Kind of flatten things out a little bit more. Don't be surprised if you have to tweak the back a little bit to make the butt look right. They do kind of flow into each other. Pull this guy up a little bit. And this is looking pretty good.
Yeah, we can come back and tweak onto this a little bit later on.
Absolutely. So we've got the hip in place. Last thing we kind of need to work on is we need to take this area here at the crotch, and we're going to round it out a little more. I'm going to go into edge mode, grab this edge here at the front, and pull it back a little bit, and then grab this edge directly above it, pull it down in Z, and maybe a little forward in Y. And it'd probably be a good idea to go ahead and check our drawing and see how things are matching our image planes. So we'll pull this forward a little bit. We can grab the edge directly beneath that. Now, once again, it's hard to make sure you've got the right edge selected, so don't be afraid to jump between views often. Get used to jumping around in your viewports. Pull this down. That's lining up much better. Perhaps we'll go into vertex mode and start moving these guys around just a little more, just to line up a little better with what were represented in our image planes. Also, we can do that with the butt as well. Go ahead and make this guy transparent so we can see the drawing. Pull this down. We can take this vertex and pull it back a little bit and down. Maybe pull this vertex in. And things are starting to line up much better with our drawing, at least from this side. We can come back in here to our perspective view and see how that changed our overall shape. Kind of squared out this part here when we did that, so we'll pull this guy back in. Maybe up a little. The butt needs some help, man.
Yeah, I know.
I'm telling you.
It's okay though. I mean, it's getting close enough.
It's getting very close. You know, it's going to be great. We're going to go back to 3D Buzz in the work in progress section. It's just going to be full of alien butts. Okay, I'm going to take this one vertex we have here, and I'm going to pull it out a little bit to kind of clean up some of that crease. I just happened to notice that. It's okay that we're suggesting a little bit of a love handle here. It's kind of cool. It makes his fat belly seem a little more natural. And so we've got our hip area in. We're ready to go ahead and extrude out our leg. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll select this one face. And let me go ahead and jump to a front view to make this a little more apparent, a little easier to understand maybe. I'll zoom out just a little bit to see the whole leg. And I'm going to extrude numerically again. And we'll just roll up, 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 up. Forget the NURMS for a minute. In fact, let me go ahead and shut the NURMS shape off, just so it doesn't get in our way anymore. There we go. Now at least nobody's thinking about that. And our extrusion height will be something right around 20.5. I'm not going to worry about exact numbers, really. Just something that is long enough to go from the hip all the way down to the ankle. And we'll click OK. So, great looking leg, huh? I'll bet that animate really well.
Stick legs. Where's that straw at again?
Exactly. So we're going to need to add a lot more detail, actually, to get these legs to look right. We'll start off... thought Max was frozen there for a second. Kind of scared me for a moment. And then I remembered that I was using Buzz's new computer. Okay, so just kind of pan around to kind of show you what we've got. This is a good time to check and see if you rounded out the legs properly. If you haven't, this is a great opportunity to switch to edge mode and start moving some of the edges that you placed around the legs out a little bit more. So now we're going to add some more detail to start animating, or actually putting in enough detail to animate our legs. We're not animating in this VTM at all. So I'm going to use my slice plane just because it's one of the easiest ways to add in parallel detail. Start off by rotating it in X 90 degrees to level it out. By default, it typically already is. And we'll shrink it down a little bit. I love how you can just use the regular scale, move, and rotate tools inside of Max to move the slice plane. It's very convenient. And also, with full interactivity on, as some of you might remember from VTM number 3, we can actually see where the edge is going to appear on our shape as long as Shaded Faces is not on. But that's not going to help us too much when we're cutting, because we're going to do this in a front view with our character transparent, just so that we can see the drawing and see where the best strategic places will be to add this detail. So we'll put one, I guess, at about mid-thigh. And another one just above the knee. Put one just underneath the knee. And I'll make two for the calf area to reshape that. Now jumping back up here to the knee area, I'm going to bisect it right down the middle. Put one slice on either one of that bisection. And that should be plenty of detail to model, not only model out our leg, but later on, if we decide to animate this character, there should be plenty of detail to get it to bend properly.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to put my slice plane away now and jump back to my perspective view. We can see these edges are wrapping all the way around. Just a tip for those of you out there who haven't been modeling long. If some of you have gone up here under your selection area in the rollout and you've switched on ignore back facing, don't be surprised if your slice plane edges did not go all the way around the back of your model. So that didn't happen in our case, but for those of you out there who see that, I don't want you to freak out. you can either go ahead and undo those cuts that you just made, or you can connect them with the cut tool.
Right.
So now I'm going to jump back to the front view, and we'll start our modeling out in front. I'll make our character transparent again. And we'll go into vertex subobject mode. I'll start off by scaling these vertices. So we'll scale them in a little bit in X, maybe also move them a little bit in X. So you just kind of work, and kind of an intuitive process. This outermost vertex I'm going to kind of pull down. You'll notice that'll help things follow the curvature of our leg just a little bit more. Also, be sure to leave a little bit of room outside the drawing. Remember, we haven't activated NURMS yet, and when you smooth out your character, your shape typically gets smaller. You can think of using NURMS or smoothing an object using Mesh Smooth, if you will, kind of like using sandpaper on your shape. It'll start out large and have very harsh edges, and then after you smooth it out, it'll be smaller and smoother. So just something to keep in mind. So I'm kind of modeling only in the front view right now. We'll then go to a left view after we finish this, and then finally we'll go to a perspective view and just kind of move things out, make things really just look right. So that one actually is placed all right. We'll move this guy in a little bit. And yes, for the record, I do often refer to vertices as guys. It's just so much easier when we get all laid back and relax. Pull these guys out. It's looking pretty good. I'm going to take these vertices here at the crotch and very carefully marquee select them and pull them in just a little bit to thin out the crotch and make the legs kind of fill in that volume just a little better than they do now. Might be a good idea actually to pull them in just a little bit more because of the effect I just mentioned that NURMS is going to have. We'll pull these vertices out, give it a little more rounding to our hip, thigh area. Now we'll jump to a side view where nothing has changed really. And we'll start scaling and moving. Don't be surprised if this takes a while. I know that I'm making this look rather easy, and if you haven't been doing this for a while, it's going to be really hard to keep up with how quick I'm doing this. So feel free to rewind the video, watch me do things. When we're done here, I will give a couple of really good solid pan-arounds of the shape so you can see how things are looking. But if you're not an experienced modeler and you haven't been doing this for a while, please pace yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself if you can't just jump right in here and model this stuff out at lightning speeds. There was a time when I wasn't even a very good modeler. You remember that, Buzz?
Oh, yes, I do. But look at you today.
Absolutely. I'm spending 3 minutes right here on this one little vertex. That's the sign of experience right there. So there we go. As I shout into everybody's eardrum. Sorry about that. And I know for some of you this is like really boring. He's like, gosh, why don't we just go ahead and do this off camera? It's because we try not to do that here at 3D Buzz.
Right.
We try to do everything right in front of everybody so you can see how to do each thing. Because, there are beginners out there who haven't seen all this stuff before and be like, great, we're modeling an alien, and they might have just finished the third VTM over the modeling tool. So I go slow just so we can see all the work being done. Pull all these guys up, maybe grab all of them and scale them in just a tad. I'll scale these guys in just a little bit. And I'm even going to really carefully select these guys. Actually, I won't scale all of them. That could be bad. We'll just pull these vertices up. Looks much better. Pull these back out. Okay, things are finally starting to take shape now. And things are a little out of whack. Some lines aren't straightened up. That's okay. I'm about to take care of all that in the perspective viewport. So I'll shade this guy up. And we've got some legs actually suggested here pretty well. We can already see that they're getting roughed in. But now let's go ahead and clean things up a little bit just to make it look a little more like our drawing. I'm going to start out by taking these vertices here at the outside and pulling them up a little bit, adding a little bit of curvature to the overall shape of our calf area. Go ahead and switch to polygon subobject mode. I'm so used to modeling for games and you start calling them faces. We'll pull these guys out just a little bit. Maybe I'll go to edge mode and pull out this single edge. Something to keep in mind, don't be afraid to jump around to all of the different sub-object modes. They're very handy inside of Max. If you're trying to grab fewer vertices, remember that grabbing an edge is just like grabbing 2 vertices, or that grabbing a face is just like grabbing all of the vertices that surround that. So speed up your workflow by switching between sub-object modes. You can do that once again with the 1 through 4 keys, 1 for vertex, 2 for edge, 3 for border, 4 for polygon. And I almost never use element, unless I've got a single polygon object with various shells. So we'll come in here, clean things up a little bit. I'm going to grab these edges here on the outside. We'll switch to edge sub-object mode. Once again, we'll hit edge, if Max will come with me. There we go. Pull these guys down, and you can see how this is kind of outlining the knee area much more realistically. Go to vertex sub-object mode. I'm going to line some of these ugly edges up. I've kind of got some zigzaggy edges from where I was moving detail. That's no problem. We'll clean these up as we go. Kind of pinch in the back of the knee a little more than it is. I come back here to the back of the leg. I'll take these outside calf vertices, pull them down, and I'm going to leave this one here in the middle up. If you look at the back of a calf, it does have a very subtle indentation at the middle, so this will kind of help suggest that as we shape our alien out. This is looking pretty good. Maybe his knees might not be all this pronounced, so maybe we'll grab this edge here, pull it out just a little more than it is. We can also grab this vertex here, and the same thing as the calf, just kind of put a little bit of a division here. Pull this down. Also, just a tip, for just maybe kind of a review for those who might have forgot what we showed them in the 3rd VTM. If you're moving your vertices around and you say to yourself, I'd just like to take maybe this vertex here and I want to pull it forward in Y, but I don't want it to come off the actual edge that it's sitting on now. Remember, you've got edge constraints, and that you can take vertices, for instance, and move them right along the edge. And that can really make things a lot easier when you're moving around detail on a model like this. So just keep that in mind. You also have face constraints, but be sure to switch it off when you're done with it, because that can give you quite a headache if you don't. So I'm pretty pleased with how this is looking. Let's go ahead and switch on NURMS and see what it's actually looking like. Come down here to Subdivision Surface. Actually hit the little cross there, and it opens up a lot faster. We'll go ahead and hit the NURMS subdivision and turn off edge faces. And this is looking pretty good, but it's looking very plain.
Right.
And it's a good idea that we switch this on now, because now we can come in here to our front view, for instance, switch off edged faces. Actually, here's what we'll do. We'll switch our iterations down to 1, leave edge faces on, and go transparent. And now we can line things up a little better with the drawing. So I'll go to vertex sub-object mode, kind of stretch out the inside of the calf a little bit. Rotate my viewport just for those of you out there who are into motion sickness. Pull in the inside of the thigh just a little bit. Once again, I'm just lining things up with this side of the drawing. I'm not really worried about what's going on over there. That's what the symmetry modifier is for. So we'll go ahead and we'll jump over here to our left view. Looks like I need to pull out some of these vertices. Just kind of marquee select, tug them out to make things line up a little more cleanly. Pull these guys out just a little. Maybe the back of the calf could come out a tad more. Alright, and that's looking pretty good. So now with that done, now that I know they both line up, I can go back into my perspective view. Let's go ahead and shade this guy back up. And that's already looking a lot better. But we can go ahead and push it further still by taking things like these vertices here, kind of along this edge. And we'll push them back in Y a little bit, just to kind of flatten out the front part of the shin. Maybe help suggest a shin bone by pulling out these vertices here. Kind of make things look a little better. Go ahead and grab this edge here at the front of the thigh. We'll pull it down and forward a little bit. Not that far. We'll pull that back up just a tad. And that's already looking much better. So he doesn't have the most muscular legs in the world anyway. If you wanted to create your alien with a lot more detail as far as muscles being ripped and maybe shin bones showing, you could very easily go in there and add a few more cuts and pull those details out. For now, this is going to work very well for our purposes. So that's going to pretty much do it for this lesson.
Okay, so that'll work. Thanks a lot.